Good evening, everybody. You're watching Truth Uncensored. I'm your host, Josh Cook, and this is the podcast where bold conversations meet Christ-centered truth. Today, I am joined by Destiny Lugo, a student journalist majoring here at ORU Relations, who recently wrote an article titled Nick Fuentes' Arsenal of Lies Exposed. In that article, she makes several strong claims regarding Nick Fuentes, his influence, and broader issues surrounding media, politics, and society itself. Today, we are going to break down that article, talk through her perspective, challenge some ideas, and have an open conversation about it. Destiny Lugo, welcome to Truth Uncensored.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh.
No problem. I appreciate you being willing to come on and do this. So now we're going to get into the first segment that we do with every guest. It's called Rapid Fire. So I'm just going to ask you a series of yes or no questions, and you can either answer yes or no, or if you think it's more nuanced or you have an explanation for it, you could answer yes or no and then give a 1 to 2 sentence explanation of why you think that thing is.
Okay, perfect.
So question 1 is, do you believe the media is fully biased?
No, I do not believe the media is fully biased. I believe that there are a lot of good journalists out there who are putting out very good work.
Do you think cancel culture is a real issue?
I do think it is a real issue. However, I also would agree that it is very much dependent upon how you are defining cancel culture in this talk.
Okay. Should controversial figures such as Nick Fuentes be banned from platforms such as Facebook and Instagram?
I think that Facebook and Instagram, as sovereign platforms, have the right to withdraw support if said figure is saying things that they cannot support.
Do you think social media companies should censor misinformation?
I think that misinformation should be treated with accountability. I don't think it should ever be allowed to run rampant, and I think that accountability for misinformation is what is needed, always.
Okay. Do you believe young people are easily influenced by social media figures?
Absolutely, and I think it's a huge issue. You see it all the time on Instagram, on X. A lot of gullible people who just need help in knowing where to turn. That's a huge issue.
Do you think it's dangerous to question widely accepted historical narratives?
Sorry, could you repeat that one more time?
Do you think it's dangerous to question widely accepted historical narratives? Like, for instance, the Holocaust. The Holocaust is a widely accepted historical narrative. Do you think it's dangerous for somebody to question that?
If you're talking about the Holocaust specifically, yes, I do, because it is the world's most documented human atrocity. It is very, very, very thoroughly investigated, and the numbers are accurate. Historians have proven what we know to be true about the Holocaust, and falsifiers of history on the Holocaust exist, and they do a lot in their power to falsify it, to make people distort the Holocaust, and I think that's an issue.
Okay. Do you believe Nick Fuentes hates all Jewish people?
I think that he has displayed a great deal of antisemitism. I'm not going to answer that yes or no, but I think that his antisemitism is a huge issue, and he is an open Jew hater. Okay.
Do you believe 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust?
I do.
Okay. Do you think political division is getting worse in this country?
I really do. I think it's very sad that, especially in America, it's very hard for people to have a conversation with Democrats if they're Republicans, Republicans if they're Democrats. I think that we need more open political discourse and seeing people for the fullness of their worldviews rather than just their labels. That's
absolutely, and that's the whole reason I created this podcast, was to have open conversations with people of similar and opposing views to make sure everybody's voice is fully heard. Do you think that comedians or people in general should have topics that are completely off limits that they can't make jokes about?
I think that what we joke about should be taken with great consideration. The Bible says that the person who is reckless with their words is a fool. And so I think it is very foolish to joke about certain things, especially cases where people have been hurt.
Okay. Do you think truth is objective?
I think that I believe in absolute truth. I don't believe in moral relativism. And so I believe that that truth has a standard, and that we should apply situations to a standard of truth.
Okay. And then lastly, do you believe that most media outlets act in good faith? Like, they're genuinely trying to give you the fact?
I would have to say that if you look at a lot of media outlets nowadays, I think that a lot of them are bent on misinformation, especially on certain topics. So that's what I would say.
Okay.
Although, of course, not all.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so that's the rapid fire section. This next section is just going to be kind of an interview section. So it's going to be a chance before we actually get into the discussion and debate part for you to fully explain your views, what led you to write the article, and kind of give your opinions fully unchallenged so people can understand what you believe on things. So my first question in this is, what led you to write the article in the first place?
Yeah, of course. So I am a fellow for camera. So camera has nothing to do with Sony's or Canon's. It stands for Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting and Analysis.
Okay.
And what we do is we fact check a lot of inflammatory headlines. We go through misinformation and we seek to rebut information that is not true or accurate. And so as a fellow in this association, I have grown in considerable ways. And so I chose this topic, addressing Nick Fuentes, because I see him as an incredibly dangerous voice in the culture right now, with inflammatory lies, with outright misinformation. He's a open white nationalist, sexist, incredibly anti-Semitic, and I think that people should not give him their time. He has proven that he is not worth giving your time to, and people should take what he says with great consideration and not listening to him.
Okay. What is your overall opinion of Nick Fuentes as a whole? So not just related to certain topics, but just overall, what's your opinion of him?
Well, I think I already said it. I do not think he is worth your time. He says a lot of stupid crap, and people try to make it seem that he's just being clipped, right? Well, look at that clip. Look at that clip. He's being manipulated. No, he's not. He's been very straightforward with what he believes. His quotes range from women should not be able to vote to joking about people dying in gas chambers, saying it's like cookies. He has belittled Epstein's crimes, saying that they were, barely legal. No, Epstein was indeed a PDF file. There are too many things that he has said, too many things, and he's just not worth your time.
Okay. If somebody was just going to take away one thing or one main message from reading your article, what would you hope that would be?
I would hope that they would see that there are too many people right now in culture, not only Nick Fuentes, who are powerful, who have voices, and who are misguiding them. I want them to see that they cannot trust anyone who has a mic, who's loud. Unfortunately, his following has been growing, and he, people have called him, a founder or a leader in the grifter movement, and he inspires people to be edgelords and to be provocative and to not have any brains and to not think about what they say. And so that is what I really want people to take away, that they need to investigate, that they need to look at a person's worldview completely and ask themselves, not only is this following a standard of truth, is this honoring to people, is this respectful, is this biblical? They need to ask these questions.
Absolutely. And then my final question is, what do you think the majority of people, what's one thing that you think people most misunderstand about your position on Nick Fuentes? People who oppose your opinion, what do you think is the main thing they might misunderstand about your viewpoint?
I think that people need to understand that that Nick Fuentes is not being misunderstood, that he has indeed been very clear with what he believes when he is asked to recant certain overt, racist, violent, anti-Semitic, Jew-hating comments. He stands by them. People need to understand that he is not this persecuted figure that he makes himself out to be. He has been very clear with what he believes, and then people need to make the choice. Will you support him? Will you buy his ideas? And ideas are powerful. Right?
Absolutely.
And so we need to make people understand that ideas have consequences in society, because it's not just a bunch of blah, blah, blah. If that blah, blah, blah is implemented into your world, then people could really, really, really get hurt. So that's why I'm very passionate about why I wrote this article.
All right. Well, that's great. So now we're going to get into the main portion of the episode, which is the discussion and debate portion. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start at the beginning of the article, kind of work my way down through certain sections. So a first sentence right off the bat, you refer to him as a white nationalist. How do you define white nationalist?
Yeah, of course. Okay, so in my view, right, when we're talking about Nick Fuentes specifically and how white nationalism has expressed itself in him and his comments, I think it's been very clear that he kind of sees white people as a distinct nation, and that they, within their own nation, the U.S. namely, and that they should maintain a form of political, cultural, and demographic dominance. He's made this very clear with his comments. That's kind of what I meant when I said that in the opening line.
So would you use that same, so obviously the term white nationalist, so that definition, would you use that definition relating that to anybody? So if you were going to call anybody a white nationalist, it would be for those reasons and beliefs that you just stated there?
Well, typically most nationalists do believe that they should have cultural dominance, economic dominance, domination, etc.
That makes sense. Okay. So then based on that definition, I would ask, so based on what you've heard of him and what you think his beliefs are, would you say that he wants America to be all white, or would you say he wants America to be majority white?
On his comments, definitely majority white.
Okay.
Although with white people holding all positions of power, as quoted by him, he has said that he believes that white people and white men need to have all of the positions of power, ideally.
All right. Mason, can we get a fact check on that?
Yeah. According to Perplexity, yes, Fuentes has repeatedly expressed views consistent with white people holding power in the U.S., including saying that white men need to run the household, they need to run the country, they need to run the companies, and that they just need to run everything.
Okay. Thank you for that fact check, Mason. So that's fine. So obviously he did say it at some point or another. I haven't seen the episode or the clip where he said that, so I don't know if he's joking or whether he was being serious. So if he was being serious, I completely disagree with that and don't think that's right. But I will try and look for a clip later on, but I will do more research on that. So, okay, so given that, so with that definition of white nationalist and given what he has said, then given that's the reason, I would agree then. If that's the case, then he is a white nationalist in that case. So now, so you call him a white nationalist. I'm not sure if in the article, like I don't have it in front of me, but did you call him a racist in the article as well?
I don't touch on that. I touch on his anti-Semitism.
Okay.
Which, yes, that is very racist of him, but at the same time, I talk about it in the form of anti-Semitism.
Okay. So then just a quick question. Do you think he's racist?
I do, not only towards the Jews, but towards black people. He has said before, Jews are running society, blacks need to be imprisoned, we would live in paradise.
Yeah, so that's a very famous clip. So I actually know that clip, and that clip has been used throughout a lot of podcasts and interviews. So,
well, if I might add, what do you think of that question?
So,
right? What do you think of that comment that he said? What does that make you think about him?
So I actually have the clip. So I'm actually going to play the actual clip because I think tone and context really matters. The way somebody says something and what their intention is when they're saying it. May
I add something to that? So, of course, tone matters a lot, especially if someone is joking, right? However, I will say there's a difference in joking, even to survive, right? Like dark gallows humor, right? But then there is a huge difference in joking to assert a claim that you can't support. And that is a lot, in large part, what Nick Fuentes does. He'll make huge inflammatory comments, joke, oh, so I'm just joking, right? But then in the process of joking, he will assert claims that he can't support. And what's the purpose of that joking, right? And that joke will affect society. That needs to be taken seriously.
Yeah, I would say there's a big difference, and I'm going to get into that in a future section. But I think most of what he says and most of these clips that make people's perception of him, they're one of three things. He's either joking or he's edgelording, which are completely different things. And the third thing is, especially when he's talking about Hitler, and we'll get into that, there's a difference between making a comment about somebody as a whole, but also breaking somebody down and looking at them through different lenses and different aspects of their life, and not having one person be defined by their worst actions. So in this case, if you're talking about just saying things that are obviously outlandish and hyperbolic and not true, I would say that's not more of joking. He's not saying, oh, it's just a joke. That's just saying something edgy just to be edgy. That's the purpose of that. So given that, would you say that you don't agree with that either?
Being edgy?
Like saying something in an edgy or provocative way for the purpose of saying it that way. Like to get people riled up about something.
The issue with Nick Fuentes and his edgelordship, right, is that for him, it's like a provocative game of just saying a bunch of stupid crap that gets people riled up, and he doesn't really have something of substance to say, something that is backed, right?
Well, he has a lot of things of substance to say. I would say the majority, if you would watch an episode of his entire show, the majority, like most of his shows are 3 to 3.5 hours long. So out of that 3-hour episode, I would say probably 85% of that episode is not edgelording, joking, being hyperbolic. Most of it is just like, it's a news show. It's like watching the news. It's every night. It's Monday through Friday, and it's always discussing something. Like he's been discussing the Iran war for the last 32 days. The last 2 months of his show have been about Iran. It's not been about the Jews. It hasn't been about all the other things. It's been covering actual news. So I would say the reason that most people have this opinion of him is that, oh, everything he does is just edgelordship and joking, is because nobody actually watches his full show.
On his full show, this is the things that we're quoting right now come from his full show.
True.
In many cases.
Very small segments of them.
Those segments reveal great quantities of his worldview in categories. And when you look at that, right, when he talks about Jews, that's a whole category. When he talks about black people in America, when he talks about women, that's a whole category, right? When you sit through these shows, sure, like he'll say something that's level-headed here and there, and sure, he won't be edgelording the whole time, but evaluate his worldview. That's what this is about.
Precisely, I completely agree.
Here's the thing. A complete lunatic can say something that sounds wise once, Does that mean that that person should qualify as a very intelligent person
Absolutely
whose ideas should run our society?
No.
That is a Nick Fuentes for you. A lunatic who occasionally may say something level-headed. That's why I wrote the article.
I would say it's the opposite. I would say somebody's worldview. So you cannot take. You can, like comedians, for instance. If you listen to a stand-up comedians, particularly ones who focus on dark humor and are edgy for a lot of it, nobody is going to take that comedian and say, based on all these jokes that they have made, all these things, the things that they say, that they don't actually mean. It's for the purpose of comedy. It's for the purpose of being edgy. That does not shape somebody's worldview. That does not shape their morals. That is, they are taking topics, a lot of times topics that are very touchy topics. They can be tragedies. Stand-up comedians make jokes about 9/11, school shootings, but it's for the purpose of comedy. It's not for the purpose of being serious.
Okay, well, here's the thing. Nick Fuentes is not a comedian. He poses himself as someone who wants to be taken seriously in society and given legit political commentary. Does he provide legit political commentary? He really does not. He does not give people sound ideas by which to abide their lives and by which to look at the world, especially when it comes to how to treat Jewish people, how to treat minorities, and how to conduct yourself as a white person in the world. No.
Okay. So I have several clips for different things that I will play in different parts of the discussion, but for now we can just agree to disagree on that point. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was a little bit further down in the first paragraph. You categorize him as a Holocaust denier. How would you define Holocaust denier?
So, to be a Holocaust denier is not just to say, no, it did not happen, to the question of whether the Holocaust happened. To be a Holocaust denier also can look like minimizing deaths, mocking the Holocaust, right? The people who died, questioning established historical facts, right? The Holocaust is the world's most well-documented human atrocity. It is true. Nazis, post the war, when they were captured, they confessed. They gave up all of this information in large part. Nazi records assuring names, hair, shoes, photographs, all of the things that validate that, yes, the Holocaust did happen, and that, yes, 6 million is a trustworthy number. And so when you look at how established the Holocaust is in history, this tragic event, you have to ask yourself, why would someone persist on doubting this event when it is, so established, when a famous Holocaust denier, David Irving, right, who just insisted on denying the Holocaust. He was taken to court by Deborah Lipstadt, a Holocaust historian. He was disproved by her in court. A court of law claimed him a falsifier of history, justly so, right? And so how could someone just off the street, right, say, I deny the Holocaust, whatever, when there is so much evidence to say, yes, it did happen, and to say, yes, 6 million people died? How can that person off the street denying the Holocaust say that they are smarter than the ruling of a court, say that they are smarter than so much compiled evidence that say that this did indeed happen? It is a worthless and stupid and inhumane hill to die on to say that the Holocaust did not happen, and it is dishonoring to the people who died and to their memory.
I would completely agree. So I think our difference here, and let me just make sure I'm clear. So you define Holocaust denial as saying it didn't happen, mocking it, making jokes about it, questioning the number as if saying it's not actually 6 million, and questioning the methods and how things actually went about. So you would say all of those things fall under Holocaust denial.
Yes.
And
they do within the definition.
Okay. So I think that's the point. We can't really debate that. It's just agreeing to disagree. I believe that to call somebody a Holocaust, because that's a very strong claim, to call somebody a Holocaust denier. If you're going to say you denied something happened, for instance, let me give an example. So if I'm a kid, right, if I'm 10 and my mom has a jar of cookies and there is 20 cookies in that jar, I go and I eat 5 of the 20 cookies in that jar. So there is 15 left. And she said, did you eat my cookies? And I say yes. And she said, well, there's this. So let's say there was 10 when she found them. So I ate 5. That would have been 15. Somebody else ate 5. So she's like, why did you eat 10 cookies? And I say, well, I didn't eat 10 cookies. I ate 5. And she's like, well, it doesn't matter what the number is. You still ate the cookies with permission. That's not me denying that I did the act. That's me saying, yes, I did that, but the number is different than what you're saying. That's the same thing with the Holocaust. People are not denying that it happened. I have met very few people who would deny that the Holocaust ever happened, but a large amount of people, and I think you quoted this and later in the interview with an ADL statistic, that less than half of the public of the world believe in the accuracy of the numbers presented in the historical accuracy of the Holocaust. So I would say that questioning the numbers and questioning methods cannot be held to the same standard as saying it didn't happen.
Well, for one, honestly, when you said, oh, we'll have to agree to disagree, you can look up and fact check that for yourself. That is within the definition of what it means to be a Holocaust denier.
Well, then I would not agree with that definition. If they're going to call anybody a Holocaust, like, they can say a white person that says the N-word is a racist. I don't think that either. So they can define things however they want, but you also have to look at historical and the way things have been defined historically. For instance, anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitic and anti-Semitism is one of the most overused things to label things with, right up there with racist. In the last 5 years, people will get called anti-Semitic for anything. People will get called anti-Semitic for criticizing the Israeli government. People will get called. So what I'm saying is they can have a definition. They can say this is how we define Holocaust denial. I'm saying I don't think that you can be a Holocaust denier if you believe it happened. You're just questioning different things about the accuracy.
If someone is genuinely curious, right, like, wow, like 6 million, did this really happen? Like, then that person can go and look and do their research and look through everything.
Absolutely.
They will concur with the consensus of the narrative of the Holocaust. And so for someone to remain in that state of skepticism towards the Holocaust, to be like, oh, I just don't think, like, that's not just pure meek doubt. It is typically always fueled by conspiracies, and that is what you see in history. If you look at people who have chosen to willfully remain in that doubt, even when they could do the research that proves the narrative of the Holocaust. And then, if I could mention, you were saying that anti-Semitism is assigned too much.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, there are people are unjustly called racist when they don't deserve it, unjustly called anti-Semitic when they don't deserve it. I can see to that. Yeah. But you mentioned the criticism of the Israeli government, right?
Yeah.
I of course, yeah. Like, I have so many Jewish friends, and they criticize their government all the time. It's a normal thing to do, right? I would never classify criticizing the Israeli government or like, oh, they shouldn't have done that. That would have been better. That's not anti-Semitism, right?
I would agree.
But
that's not what they're calling people anti-Semitic for.
Yes, yeah. So, of course, you need to, think reasonably on that topic. But when you look at anti-Semitism, this really warrants your deep thought. Because if you look at people and you're just like, well, they're just doubting and, just give them grace, they just don't believe it. It's like, no, like, look at history. This is proven. This happened. And these are the facts. And people need to accept that. Because if they don't, then it's like, what's behind that refusal?
Okay, so I would agree completely with the idea that if people are genuinely curious, they should be allowed to investigate. And I also agree fully that if it's actually accurate, if 6 million Jews really did die in the Holocaust and everything happened exactly the way they say it happened, then people who do research should come to that same conclusion. My issue is, and I think the point speaks for itself, and this is what I tell people all the time. And this goes for anything in history. Anybody should be encouraged in investigating and questioning anything. And if they doubt something, they should be encouraged to try and find out the truth behind that. And if the people that are saying that this is correct, if they are that confident in that what they're saying is correct, then they should open people questioning it, investigating it, doing their own research. And if they're right, then they should come to that same conclusion. The issue is there are so many people, as you said, less than half the public believe the accuracy of the Holocaust. I would say that's a huge red flag to the accuracy of it.
What you were saying with, people being allowed to question, of course, like, we live in a free country, like, please, have a free mind, that kind of thing. But then when you look into it, you see, which is, renowned Holocaust historian Deborah Lipstadt, there's even a movie about her work with the court case denial. You should go and see it. Amazing.
Is that with the David Irving guy?
Yes, yeah. But in this movie, right, obviously, she has her book. You could go and order it too. But in this book, she asks the questions, she does the investigations, and she comes to this narrative that the world has accepted and is true. And then when you talk about the ADL statistic, right, of people doubting it, right?
That's less than half the public. So I wouldn't say the majority of the world believes something if less than half the public does not believe it.
Ask yourself this question. Why is there this tide? Why is there this rising tide of people denying the Holocaust and treating it with skepticism and scrutiny? Why? I would say, in large part, due to people like Nick Fuentes who have been spreading lies, due in part to people like Candace Owens saying that works and books and testaments and memoirs like that of Elie Wiesel, a survivor of the Holocaust, treating it like works of fiction, right? That is not acceptable. And so I would say that a stat like that I quoted in my article, ADL, of people, of this growing trend of doubting the Holocaust, I would say that is due to toxic voices in culture. This is real. This is a thing where people will toxically influence people to deny the Holocaust, to say it didn't happen. This is so common in propaganda.
That's the issue. Nick Fuentes and nobody else is doing that. They're not telling anybody the Holocaust didn't happen. They're not telling anybody to tell people it didn't happen. They're simply saying we should not be just accepting the numbers and everything that they have. We should not just accept it without doing our own research. He presents the research that he's done, just like many other people do. And that's the difference between Nick and a lot of other people. I have watched a lot of other people like Dan Blizzard and so many other people who will say, it's the Jews, it's the Jews, it's the Jews. And they will have nothing to back it up. Nick is one of those people where Nick not only says that, but if he makes a claim, he backs it up with research and evidence that he's done to support that claim. And whether or not you agree that his claim is true, I think it is a very big issue that they are trying to call. And I would ask this. So we've been using the term anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic a lot, and you believe that Nick Fuentes is anti-Semitic. I don't believe he's anti-Semitic. So what is your definition of anti-Semitic and anti-Semitism? What is that in your mind?
Really quick, you just said something that defeated itself. You said that Nick Fuentes says stuff that he backs up with his evidence, that he backs up with research.
Yeah.
False. When he said the Holocaust did not happen, could you say that claim that he made has research to back it up?
Or do you have the clip up on your, I can pull up that clip. Seriously. Again, you cannot put in jokes and edgelord. You cannot put all that. Those are two separate things. That's the issue. You talk about his character and his worldview and his morality. You cannot use jokes that he makes and edgelording that he does to define his morals and his worldview. Because in those cases, it's clear that he's not being serious. It's clear that he is joking. And when he is asked a good faith question, it's exactly what he told Piers Morgan. Somebody from the Free Press did an article one time where they accused Nick of having two personas. He said he has one persona on his show, America First, and he has another persona that he rolls out on podcasts and interviews. And they claimed that his tactic is that he wants to make himself more agreeable and more applicable to the mainstream so that he can somehow take power and then divert to these other horrible claims that they claims he has. And what he told Piers Morgan was, he's like, yeah, he's absolutely right about the two personas, but that's something everybody has. You are not going to be the same person sitting in a room with a circle of your friends joking around, and then if you're actually being interviewed, somebody's asking you a good faith question. So he's like, yeah, on my show we make jokes. We are very hyperbolic. We say things that are edgy. And then when I come on shows like yours and you show me clips of things that I've said and ask me to elaborate, I elaborate and I explain to you what my views actually are.
Okay, to respond to what you just said, right, you're saying that this quote that he said, the Holocaust did not happen, you're saying, oh, no. You can't.
I'm saying that you have to watch the clip.
Please.
Have you watched the clip where he says that?
You're saying, oh, this cannot be taken for good faith because he was joking.
I'm saying you have to listen to the tone. Tone matters. Context matters.
Here's the thing. You could probably pull up the clip. We could judge his tone all day long, right? But here's the thing with joking, right? You could say, oh, no, it means nothing. Here's the thing. Fuentes, he has a love affair with joking about the Holocaust. There's an issue.
He jokes about many things other than that, but yes.
He does. But it's like I said, joking, dark gallows humor to survive something, that's one thing. It's completely different to perpetually joke about something, to insert claims that you cannot back up with evidence.
It doesn't have to just be a coping mechanism, though. I've never been in a school shooting. I've never experienced that, but it doesn't mean I can't make a joke about it.
That's not relevant to the conversation right now.
We're talking about humor.
This. And in this case, he inserts claims the Holocaust did not happen that he cannot back up. When you say, oh, Nick Fuentes just says things that are backed with research, that are peer-reviewed, all that stuff.
I'm talking about serious
He really can
claims.
Be taken seriously. He has said this seriously.
Okay, so I'm saying that's why I think we should pull the clip and watch it.
I agree.
Okay. All right, here's that clip.
I don't think so. I don't believe there were gas chambers. I don't believe it was 6 million. I also don't believe that there was ever an order given out that said, okay, we're going to kill them all. Those are the three things you can't.
Okay, so in response to that, I would say that I agree with him on one of those things completely. I do not believe that 6 million people were killed in the Holocaust, but I would say I disagree with the gas chambers claim. I don't know how many gas chambers were used or what the extent was of them being used.
Just letting you know, Josh, we have 2 minutes left on this particular topic.
Okay, sounds good. So I believe that gas chambers were used to an extent. I think there's plenty of historical evidence for that, but I don't know how many were used. And then as of the order being given out, I haven't actually done research on that, so I can't give a firm opinion on that.
Okay, well, I, for one, am completely appalled by that monologue of his. History and all of the artifacts and research have proven you can go to Auschwitz and you can visit concentration camps. Yes, there were gas chambers that killed people. Yes. 6 million, completely verifiable. And then there were no orders to kill them. To me, that is just disgusting. There are commandant reports, there are Nazi affirmations that yes, they had orders to kill them. It was malicious, it was genocidal, and it was systematic killing of Jews.
So then my question to you, lastly, you can turn the timer off as soon as she answers this. We'll just move on to the next topic if she wants to. She doesn't have to answer it. But so I would say because for me, and obviously I'm going to do more research on this after the podcast. But when he says there was no order given, I'm pretty sure if he may have not, but you guys can say in the comments if he did. But I'm pretty sure he used the word initially. So initially, even Benjamin Netanyahu himself has said that Hitler's intent in the beginning was not to exterminate the Jews, it was to expel the Jews. He didn't want them in Germany. He thought they had too much power over financial institutions and banks. He didn't like the influence that they were bringing of transgenderism and the LGBTQ and all that stuff to Germany that was happening under the Weimar Republic. So would you say, that, in your opinion, or based on whatever research you've done, would you say that it was always Hitler's agenda and it was always his plan from the get-go to get into power and kill the Jews? Or do you think that he tried other methods of expelling them and getting rid of them and just not wanting them in Germany, and after all of his things did not work, then he resorted to that? Which I'm not condoning that, but would you say that was his plan from the get-go, or did it evolve into that?
I personally don't want to get into the weeds of the evolution of Hitler, but he wrote that Jews were responsible for Germany's problems and described them as a danger that must be removed from national life. And he frequently used language of elimination, removal, cleansing, and reference to Jews. What kind of language is that? That's the language of genocide.
I would agree. The language of taking away life and having them not be alive anymore. But I mean, just calling them harmful and dangerous. I mean, you've called Nick Fuentes the same thing. You referred to him as a dangerous.
Destiny did give her answer to the question, and you said that.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. We'll move on to the next topic. Okay. So the next topic, later, I'm not even sure if it's in that paragraph or in the next paragraph, but you reference comments that he's made, like Hitler was cool, and the joke that he made about the cookie monster and everything. So from my understanding, obviously he's made many statements like this. From my perspective, seeing a lot of them, having watched them even in full episodes of his show with full context, statements like these tend to fall into one of three categories. They either fall into joking, edgelording, or in the case of Hitler, looking at a figure as a whole, and not, because I think a lot of people do this. A lot of people judge people based on their worst actions. So a lot of people will never acknowledge, and I've seen street pollers go and do this. They'll say, can you give me any positive qualities about Hitler? Can you give me anything good that you think he did? Well, what were some of his economic policies that you elected in? People refuse to answer questions like those because they think it's a sin or this horrible thing to ever put him in a good light or anything because of something that he did. So my question would be, taking it from that, do you think that, for instance, he elaborated on the statement Hitler is cool, both in an interview with Piers Morgan and in an interview with another woman, where he explains, he looks, and I do this too, but he's like, I look at things as a student of history. When I say things like Hitler is cool, obviously I'm not saying he wasn't evil. He was evil, he was diabolical, he calls him those things. And the Holocaust is inexcusable. But he is cool in other ways. For instance, he says the Nazi uniforms were cool, the marches were cool, the edits that the people make. So are you saying that agreeing with any of Hitler's policies or saying he did any good is not okay because of something that he did?
Okay, you say that context matters, especially right now. You're saying context matters in the evaluation of Nick Fuentes.
Yeah.
Well, this is not a guy who's just like, oh my gosh, I really love their uniform. I really love their chants. I love how they march.
That's the majority of what he mentions on his show. He talks about the edits and the uniforms and the marches. And that's one of the reasons he says he's cool, because of the edits.
Please let me finish.
Okay.
He is not this guy who's just like, wow, I just love all of this about them. Context matters. He is a guy who doesn't just say that in an isolated, cute, naive kind of way. He includes it with comments like, the Holocaust didn't happen. Oh, did that many Jews really die? It's not this isolated little game of let's just look into historical figures. It is a combination of anti-Semitic tropes, anti-Semitic libels, casting doubt on the Holocaust revisionary commentary. And so you cannot naively look at those comments and say, he just loves Hitler for his, military prowess. No.
So specifically those comments, because he's made many comments, but the two times, according to clips that are online and clips that people use, I'm assuming if there were more, people would use them. But there's only one clip where he specifically says, "I love Hitler," and that is where he is talking about what it was specifically after. Are you aware of what happened with him and Andrew Tate and Sneeko and all of them at a Miami Beach nightclub?
Probably not that instance specific.
Basically, they were doing a 7-hour. It's people call it the amassing of the Manosphere Avengers, and it was basically Andrew Tate, Tristan Tate, Justin Waller, Sneeko, Clavicular, Nick, and so all these people, they do like a 7-hour stream at Clavicular's house, and then they think it's a hilarious idea because Nick is this virgin Christian guy who doesn't do all these things, so they're like, let's take him to a club, it'd be hilarious. So they go to this club, and none of them have admitted to doing this. It could have been somebody there who saw Nick and thought it'd be hilarious, but somebody got the club to play, do you know Kanye West's controversial song HH?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I know.
So they got the club to play that song. It was played for 30 seconds. Not just them, but the entire club. Everybody in there was rocking out to it, because whether or not you agree with the message, it is a very good musical production. But anyway, they turn it off after 30 seconds. Nothing happens. They leave, go home. Wake up the next day. It's an international incident. The mayor, they've been banned from Vendome and all of their other hospitality groups, even though there's no evidence that any of them requested that the song be played. The mayor of Miami Beach condemned them and wanted them to be banned from Miami. And there was a woman who posted a tweet in their defense, and he sent 2 policemen to her house to demand that she take the tweet down because it was an act of encouraging or inciting violence and terrorism. So my point being in saying this, you do have to have context with things, but I actually have a clip, the clip that is usually most referenced when he says, "I love Hitler and Hitler is cool," and where he actually does give context behind it. And I think that this is very useful when discussing this topic. So I'm going to go ahead and play this now and then get your opinion on it.
Hitler has been used as a buzzword for 80 years to prevent anybody from talking about any of this. Whenever anybody says that Jewish people have too much influence in the Western world, they say Hitler. Whenever somebody says it's maybe a bad idea for America to become majority non-white, people say Hitler. Whenever anybody says we need a strong executive that can actually do things, that can actually send people back over the border, they say Hitler. We're defanging that. That has no power over us. Hitler, Nazi, these are particular words from a particular time that hold no weight over us. That holds no weight over me. I'll call them cool. I'll say the uniforms look cool. I'll say whatever I want about it. That's not my moral language. I don't care about any of that. We want the fathers back in the home. We want God back in society. We want the nation to be strong. And yes, by the way, we want the country to be majority white. You can call me a Nazi. You better be careful, because if I'm a Nazi, then there's millions of young people that are following a fucking Nazi.
Okay, so that is the full clip where he expands upon that after the Piers Morgan interview, and I've kind of already given my piece. I'm the one that played the clip, so I would like to get your response to that video in its entirety.
Okay, so just the video, just what you just played. There are some things taken isolated that are great, like fathers back in the home, that always helps people. God, that's great, better accountability with immigrants, all that stuff, right? Isolated. Yes, I can concede to that. But the deal with this is that has nothing to do with Hitler. When you say Hitler was awesome, right? What you have to stand accountable to, and when you say he was awesome...
He never said Hitler was awesome. He said Hitler was cool.
Okay.
Those are 2 different words.
Okay, but Hitler was cool. Praise, right? That's the concept. When you look at this kind of guy, well, not only was he responsible for the genocide of Jewish people, 6 million people, also deaths of Slavic people, disabled people, Nazi policy escalation, the final solution, so many issues with World War II and deaths across Europe.
He was the Margaret Thatcher of Germany. He thought that people who were going to have disabilities or be mentally impaired or people of certain races should be basically the whole idea of eugenics, and I disregard that completely. And another part of the context is you chose to isolate 2 comments that he said. That video was not about like fathers being in the home. He was saying the whole video was about, so will you concede that Hitler, the Holocaust, these words and this idea has been used and has been turned into a buzzword for the last almost 100 years into whenever people say the word Hitler or the word Holocaust, no matter what context it's in, there is an automatic negative connotation given to that. And God forbid anybody say Hitler had great, and again, you have to be able to compartmentalize people without, so if you look at Hitler without the Holocaust, a lot of people have a very hard time doing this. But if you look at Hitler as a person, and if the Holocaust never happened, he would be revered as one of the greatest leaders of all time. And Germany would be the second greatest military power to the U.S. And nobody would have a problem with him because he does have great aspects as a leader.
Can I respond to that? You just said, look at Hitler as if the Holocaust never happened. You're asking me to look at a fantasy, hypothetical world that doesn't exist.
I'm asking you to look at him besides the Holocaust. Look at all of his other views.
I cannot evaluate him in a hypothetical, untrue way. I have to look at reality. And this is what this whole conversation is about. We have to look at reality.
Absolutely.
Look at the reality of Hitler, who he truly was. He destroyed Europe in many ways and brought many curses upon them. The genocide, the death of so many people, of a humongous suffering.
Absolutely.
And then when you look at Nick Fuentes, right, well, look at this. Maybe he said this good thing. Maybe. No, look at all of him.
Absolutely.
And assess justly. So that question, to me, is very foolish. Look at Hitler as if this never happened. Look at this
I'm simply saying, if the Holocaust didn't happen, if he didn't have it out for Jews and didn't exterminate what you say is 6 million people, what do you think the public opinion would be of Hitler in 2026?
I think that's an irrelevant question. I really do.
Okay, that's fine. We will move on to the next topic. So you also mentioned in the article that his content is harmful to the Jewish community. I would ask you, what specifically is the harm? And can you point to specific examples of real world harm or things that have happened because of actions of him or his audience and things that they have said that are actually harmful?
Well, like I said, ideas and thoughts are very, very weighty, right? We can't take them casually. So when we look at his thoughts and his ideas concerning his anti-Semitic comments, his comments about Jewish people, there's a lot to be unpacked there. For instance, he blames a lot of America's problems on organized Jewry, right? Saying that Jews are running society, that, they're lurking behind our government, infiltrating everything, that they're trying to upend the Western civilization, a white genocide, right? White replacement, the Great Replacement, all that stuff. All of these conspiracies singling out a minority in America that quite frankly has blessed America in incredible ways. And so I really think that his ideas they promote hate, they promote division, they promote an us-them mentality, right? Those Jews over there, right? They're just harming us. That's what so many harmful actors in history have done that have caused great harms, great historic harms. That's exactly what Hitler did. You defend him so much. Well, that's what Hitler did.
I don't personally, and again, this is for the purpose of debating Nick and Nick's ideas. On a regular basis, I am not debating people on Hitler. I'm not debating people on the Holocaust. You even mentioned you think, and we'll get into this later as well, but you mentioned that you think he's a misogynist and a sexist because he has mentioned that he doesn't think women should have the right to vote. As for the right to vote, I mean, there's a whole argument you can get into for that. There's a good argument for both sides, but I don't usually get into that because I don't like to get into hard-pressed arguments and debates with people about things that are not likely going to change. So obviously, to repeal the 19th Amendment, there are all these things we would have to go through. Women would actually have to vote to have that right taken away. So the likeliness of that happening is next to none. So you're, and like you said, you refuse to talk about looking at Hitler as if the Holocaust didn't happen because you think it's an irrelevant hypothetical. Well, I would say at this point in history, talking about women having the right to vote is an irrelevant hypothetical because the likeliness of it happening is next to none. But with every argument, there's two sides to an argument. But there are very few things that deal in absolutes. I try not to deal in absolutes on most things. I deal in nuance because there's nuance to everything. And so what I would say, and you some of the things that you mentioned, I agree with, some don't. You still haven't answered the question, how is it harmful to the Jewish community? And you can think his thoughts are bad, but somebody could even say the Holocaust never happened. Am I going to think they're lying? Yeah. Should I think they should say that? No, but that is not harming anybody.
Okay, I really, really, really disagree.
Okay.
His comments, right, are entering a pool of media, right?
Yeah.
Not only his voices, but many others. And his voices are a part of this avalanche of global anti-Semitism that has been rising. I have many Jewish friends, and a lot of them go through hell on a consistent basis, with protests outside of class, with menstrual blood on their dorm walls. Awful. They have been harassed in many ways. A sweet friend of mine in the UK was barred from a simple soccer game. This is not just about, well, is it really harming anyone? No, voices matter. And a lot of times, radicalized thoughts like they're ruining our society, they're upending Western civilization, things that he has said, they are influencing people.
Yeah.
These words of his are not just going in ears and going out the other and doing nothing to our world.
And nor should they.
They help. these thoughts help to inspire violence against Jews. In the fall of 2025, there was a killing of Jews outside a synagogue in Manchester. In May of 2025, a year ago, there was a killing of a sweet Jewish couple in Washington, D.C. The killer said Free Palestine, shot them on the spot. The thing is that with thoughts and opinions and influencers like Nick Fuentes, they're putting perverse thoughts into society that are influencing people to be radicalized, not to think in us, them, and it results in anti-Semitism. It results in people harassing Jewish people and thinking they're to blame again. And this is what happens, unfortunately, almost every century. Irrational hatred for the Jewish people comes back up, and it is our job as responsible citizens to put out that fire.
It hasn't
because
even,
anti-Semitism is a poison.
It hasn't even been a century since the Holocaust even happened. It hasn't even been 100 years. You can't say every century because it hasn't even been a century since it happened.
What I'm saying is that almost every generation has an issue with anti-Semitism, and it is our responsibility to address it.
Okay, so I think the two of the things you said are absolutely horrible. Menstrual blood on the wall being a part of a soccer game, those are utterly disgusting things. However, and I'll do something I never thought I'd do in this debate, and I'll quote Ben Shapiro on something. Ben Shapiro made a claim, and I think can be applied to this as well. He's like, look, if I'm walking around downtown, if I'm walking around like in a hood, this is a known bad part of town, I can walk around waving $100 over my head, and I might get robbed. Is it the fault of the person who robbed me? Yes, they should be tried, and they should be put in court, and they should face their problems. But there's also an issue with me, because if I really think in my head, what's going to be the result of me waving this money over my head? I'm going to get robbed. So there's a level of common sense to something, and Nick Fuentes has never encouraged violence against anybody. He has never encouraged any of his supporters or any of his followers to go out and do the actually, and I thought I was going to use this clip later, I'll actually use it now, and it'll also tie in to a point that you also made, that you said you think his views are vehemently anti-Christian and lack decency. But the message that he actually gives to people is the message of love, and the message of love those who persecute you. And it is our job, no matter what they do, to meet them with love and meet them with compassion, and understand that Christ came for everybody. So I think those things are horrible. They should not have happened. But is there any evidence that any of those things were done by people who support Nick Fuentes and people who identify as groypers and America First? Because if they said Free Palestine, that goes against everything Nick Fuentes stands for.
This is not to assign, right, all of these horrible things that are happening against Jewish people all on the head of Nick Fuentes and his influence, right? But
you just said that it's his influence that causes them to happen.
I said in my article,
the ideas.
I did not put all of the blame on him. I said that many of his ideas are influencing this problem that we have, which is why I addressed him explicitly in my article as someone who is contributing to the disaster of anti-Semitism that we see in the world right now.
I'm talking about what you just said in this discussion. You just said, when you were going through your whole monologue, you said that his ideas and the things that he is pushing and the influence that he has.
Violence and anti-Semitism. Yes.
When has he ever encouraged violence against anybody? Can you give me any quote, any clip where he's ever encouraged violence against anybody?
The thing with his comments is that he doesn't literally explicitly have to say, go kill a Jew, for actually his comments to produce that kind of fruit. Because right now, comments like what he's saying, right, they are ruining the world. Like, Jews right now in America are the reason why you can't pay your bills and why you can't land a good job, and they're stealing all the jobs and they're ruining the economy.
But he also doesn't deal in absolutes. He deals in nuance, and he said this many times. He is not talking about the entire Jewish community.
His comments are like this, and you cannot dispute that because you can look up these comments that he's made. And here's the thing. Yeah, he's not encouraging anyone to pick up a gun, right? But what he is saying is an inherent us, them, and that thinking inspires crazy lunatics out there listening in the crowd to what he's saying to go and pick up guns, like what we saw in May, like what we saw in October of 2025. And so that's what I mean when I say that his comments inspire violence, hatred, and anti-Semitism. And that's actually kind of a fact right now because of the global surge of anti-Semitism.
So I'm actually going to go back to a quote that you actually, it was a clip that I was planning on playing, but you quoted it. It's the clip where it says, people are like, no, it's not the Jews, no, it's not blacks, no, it's not women. And then he goes on to this whole thing. And one of the things he says in that clip is blacks need to be incarcerated for the most part. Everything about that, he was joking. And people can see that. Even black people and people who are liberals and who don't believe can see that and understand that. However, he was given a chance to clear that up on Piers Morgan. So Piers Morgan played the clip for him, and he said, so what do you have to say about that? And he said, everything I said there is 100% true. Doubles down like he does on everything. And then Piers said, so you believe that most black people should be incarcerated? And he's like, yeah. I mean, he's even joking there. And he's like, like, okay, so tell me, what percentage of black humans do you think should be incarcerated? And he's like, whatever percentage commit murders and violent crime. And Piers Morgan said, okay, well, what percentage would you say that is? And he said, well, the last statistic I read, it was 1 in 20. And he's like, okay, so 5%. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, well, that's not what you meant when you said most. And then he goes back, and people, you can look at countless reactions from people of all sides of the spectrum, Jewish people, black people, liberals, all these people. And he's like, people understand that it's an effect. It's called the bumper sticker effect. And it's an effect to where he's like, on my show, we make exaggerated claims. We are very hyperbolic. And some of the things, and we play devil's advocate, and we play with different sides of an argument and different sides of things. And he said, but anybody who's watching that, who actually understands humor, understands the way that my show works, knows that I do not mean the majority of people. It's the people, but it seems like the majority a lot of times, because when you have people that make up 13% of the population but commit 60% of the crime, I'll quote Charlie Kirk, yes, there should be more police in their neighborhoods. There should be more law enforcement in the neighborhoods that have the people that commit the majority of the crime. That's not stereotyping. That's not racist. That's data analysis and doing things according to that. And I would say that's the same thing can be applied to this. You mentioned things where he says Jews are running society, or he says most blacks should be incarcerated. He's using the term Jews, and people like you will hear that and you'll say, oh, he's obviously talking about the majority of Jewish people, when in reality, that's why when he gives evidence to support that, like when he says Jews control the media and control what you consume. Well, look at the media. Meta is owned by Mark Zuckerberg, who is Jewish. Disney Plus is Bob Iger. Paramount, NBC, Peacock, TikTok, Larry and David Ellison. If you look at all of these media conglomerates and all of these investing firms and brokerages, the majority of the people in all aspects of life are run by Jewish people. It's the media, it's the food, it's the government. It's, if you look at how many people in office and in the State Department and in Congress identify as Jewish, so when he says that, he's literally talking about majorities, not a majority of people groups, but majority of those types of situations. So when he mentions media, or he mentions government, or he mentions different areas and says Jewish people have influence on this, and I've even seen this firsthand. I'll give you a first-hand example that happened recently. Have you ever heard of the show?
Just to let you know that we only have a few minutes left on this topic.
Okay. Have you ever heard of the show Blue Bloods?
Not necessarily.
It's a cop show that was released by CBS that went on for the last 15 years. It's one of the few shows that had Christian themes. The main characters were Christian. They went to church every Sunday. They sat down for family dinner every night. It was one of the few shows that had that wholesome theme left in it. CBS canceled that show because they were moving into their woke and liberal area, and they didn't want a show where the majority of the main characters were Christian and had the elements of going to church. So they canceled it. A year after they canceled it, Larry, I'm not sure who it is, it's either Larry or his son, David Ellison, bought Paramount, or bought the company who owns Paramount. And they rebooted the show, not under the same name, but did a sequel show called Boston Blue. And I was hearing at this time, this was a while ago, this was before I became an avid supporter of Nick Fuentes, and I hadn't heard a lot of these ideas. And some of the ideas I heard, I was like, well, is that actually true? And then this show comes out. I'm like, all right, let's sit down and watch it. Guess what happens? The show went from having predominantly Christian main characters to now 2 of the main characters have moved to a different city, and now the majority of the main characters are Jewish. And a whole subtext of the entire show is them trying to convert the Christians to Judaism and them going to church with them. It is infiltrating the media. It is infiltrating shows, and it's being done by the people that run these companies who are in fact Jewish.
Well, you just said something very loaded, pretty much. You know, oh, well, like, you know, they pretty much do, you know, own the world, own the media, all this stuff. That's a classic anti-Semitic Jewish trope. And here's the thing. The reality with media ownership and how it actually works is that most major media is owned by a small number of large corporations, Disney, Comcast, Warner Bros. Discovery, Paramount Global. But these companies are publicly traded, owned by millions of shareholders worldwide, and run by executive chosen by boards, not ethnic groups controlling them as a unit.
Not controlling them as a unit, but you have to look at the people, and you have to also look at the people making the decisions. For instance, when you have a publicly traded company, and I know this because my dad is an accountant, and he's explained this to me, that Bob Castellini, who owns the Reds with a few other people, him and a group of guys own the baseball team. But there are different kinds of shares. There are shares in stock, there are shares in ownership, and there are shares in voting. Whoever has the majority of the voting shares, and usually that's the CEO in most cases. I'm pretty sure Mark Zuckerberg has the voting shares in Meta. Elon Musk has the voting shares in X. Whoever has the vote, it doesn't matter who else is publicly trading the company, who else has ownership. Whoever has the majority of the votership gets to make all the decisions. So even though Bob Castellini owns the Cincinnati Reds baseball team with other guys, those other guys have zero say in anything that happens to that team because he has the majority of the say in what goes on. So I could care less how many different people, obviously the Jewish people as an entity don't own Disney, but if the CEO, Bob Iger, and the people who are making the decisions are Jewish, then just like the liberal woke people who try to infiltrate their agendas into shows, they're going to then infiltrate their agendas into shows and movies. And we've seen that firsthand with CBS and Paramount.
Right. I'll give Destiny a minute to respond, and then after that, let's move to the next topic.
Cool.
Or minute and 30 seconds.
Cool.
Okay. Well, with this media topic and Jewish infiltration and influence, that kind of thing, this is not the entirety of media. Media is very diversified across the world. And
Sure.
so to say they own all media, they're influencing all media in their favor, that is not true.
I said majority, I didn't say all.
That's still even off. And so to say that, well, Jewish people are heads of all of the media, what's being dispersed, if you look at all the industries of the world, that is a classic trope that cannot be established. And so to say that, oh my gosh, all of these people are CEOs, they're all Jewish, this must mean something about our society being upended by Jewish people, that's not adding up.
That's the last thing. We will move on to the next topic. But can you just, off the top of your head, can you just name me all the social, not all of them, but the main ones that people use?
Instagram, X, Facebook,
YouTube.
Yes.
Okay, so let's just take those. So obviously, all these underground ones, people don't really use them. So if we take Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and X, 6 things. Let's see which ones are owned by Jewish people and which ones aren't. YouTube, which is controlled by Google, which is owned by Alphabet, the CEO and the person who's in charge of that is Jewish. Facebook and Instagram are both under Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, who is Jewish. I'm not sure about Snapchat. I have not done enough looking into Snapchat. And then you have Elon Musk, who owns X. So that's 6 social media platforms. Snapchat could very well be a Jewish person too. If you want to look yourself, I'm very open to that. But even if it is just Snapchat and X, that are the only 2. That's 2 out of the 6. That means 4 out of 6 social media platforms, their CEOs and the people that are making the majority of the decisions for those companies are Jewish, and that is 67%. So yes, when I say the majority of social media is controlled by Jewish people, that's what I mean. When 4 out of 6 main social media platforms, their CEOs and the people controlling the decisions, and those are the people controlling what gets banned. I promise you, if Elon Musk owned Meta, you would have the same videos of Nick Fuentes on Instagram and Facebook as you do on X. But the reason you don't is because they ban.
Here's the thing. Even if some individuals in tech are Jewish, that doesn't prove group control.
I didn't say group control.
That's like saying because some CEOs are Jewish people run the industry.
I'm not saying
that. That's not how
Josh,
corporations
let's not
work.
invade Destiny's time.
Okay, that's
There's
cool.
only 1 minute left.
That's fine.
This targets, obviously, a huge reasoning error. It's like a hasty generalization, and it confuses individual identity with institutional control, which to me is super important. Because what you're saying will only have one effect on the listener. Jewish people are running the world, which is not true. And so to say this and to be concerned about this is a huge deal.
That's fine. We're going to move on to the next topic. I'm just going to make one last closing statement, and that statement is, I judge everybody individually, but when you look at how many individuals are in certain areas, I'm not saying it's a whole group, but I'm saying that if you have all these people that follow this same religion, this same dogma, and they're running all these things that are very big parts of society, then you can make the inference that probably means that most of society, or the people that are controlling these companies, are going to be using their background and what they believe and how they run the company. And I think there should be more diversity in that. That's all I'm saying. I do not think that we should be able to have the majority of media conglomerates and other people and have all the CEOs and all the people making the decisions be a part of one religion or people. I don't think that should be a thing.
Well, like with Mark Zuckerberg, right? Being Jewish, that kind of thing, and so many other people also being Jewish, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are imparting Judaism or say secularism, or they are diversified in their beliefs.
But they focus more on things on their platforms. They ban more things for anti-Semitism than anything else. And that's a problem.
To ban anti-Semitism is never a problem.
None of Nick Fuentes' videos should be banned off of any social media platform. Whether people want to disagree with them or put on community, that's fine. They should
move on to the next topic.
That's fine. So next topic. You say that his ideas are vehemently anti-Christian, and most of them lack decency. First of all, what specific ideas are you referring to, and what evidence do you have that he is not a Christian? Or as I like to say, Christ follower, because the term Christian is used so flippantly, it's ridiculous.
Right. Well, for one, I never said that he was not a Christian, but I did say that his comments lack decency and that they are utterly unchristian in the sense that his comments do not match what we as Christians should follow,
Which is
or what we should say or model our lives after.
Like, can you say a comment of his, a
yes.
serious comment, not edgelording, nothing, making a joke, a serious comment that he made in good faith, that would be something that a Christian should not say, in your opinion? Not joking, not edgelording, serious comment.
Well, his serious comments and what I'm about to say are true. You can fact check them. You can bring them up in their serious contexts. All of his comments about Jewish people, organized Jewry, the Holocaust never happened, laughing about the death of people, his comments about women not being able to vote, his comments about gender worldview, like serious problems there, his comments about diversity in the world, and honestly, white supremacist comments. And so when you look at honestly, he has many views that are very troubling. But when you look at some core values, we have huge issue with his views on Jewish people that in many ways resembles Nazi ideology. We have worldviews with women that are super problematic, would not want to be a woman in his country if he ever were a president. His issues with diversity, with immigration. And so then when I look at those comments and I look at the Bible, right, what Jesus taught, Jesus said, there is neither slave nor free, there's neither Jew nor Greek, there's neither male nor female, for we are all one in Jesus Christ. And so when you look at Nick Fuentes, he does not impart the spirit of Christ. He does not impart the spirit of humility, the spirit of love that brings people together. And so the spirit of love would be one that seeks to understand Jewish people, that seeks to look into the history of the Holocaust and not belittle or joke about it and make little of their lives. A spirit of Christ would honor women, would say that yes, their voice in politics and their vote matters, would seek to honor diversity and not harbor and hold on to the hill that white people are supreme in this nation, that we should have power. Because here's the thing, if you say comments like white people should be running everything again, white men specifically, then there are several things wrong with that are not biblical. To point to one race that should be running everything. God is about the global church. God has a global body with several ethnic groups, so much you can't count them. God is coming back for a global body, not just a white people in a nation.
He's coming back for those who follow Christ and have accepted Christ.
Yes, and so Jesus is coming back for his bride, and people who follow him are all over the world.
True.
And so that is what I mean, and that is a very, very solid claim, because when you look at him honestly, that's all that you can come away with. He is not, say you are a Christian man, right?
Yeah.
Christian woman looking at Nick Fuentes, and you're like, is he a role model? Not only in the political sphere, but in the Christian sphere? Not a chance. Not a chance.
Okay, so obviously that's a loaded thing, and obviously we've discussed a lot of these topics a lot, so I'm going to focus on the two that I feel like we haven't touched on yet, and that's the topic of women, and I don't think we've talked about white supremacy and what your views are on that. So we'll start with the white supremacy. So you claim that a lot of his ideas are white supremacist ideas. You call him a white nationalist. Would you call him a white supremacist?
In many ways I would, because if he's saying comments like I said, white men need to be running everything again, then what are you inferring about your own race that can make decisions so good? That that has the ultimate leadership ability, right? So again, that is inferring a bunch of things.
But getting into the white supremacists, would you agree? This is my I've asked you for your definition. I'll give mine. My definition of white supremacist, or really racist. It's the same thing. White supremacist or racist, anybody who thinks that one race, no matter what race that is superior to all the rest of the races, or even superior to one race, and they show evidence of hatred and discrimination and want of violence against that race. Would you say that's a fair definition of racist and white supremacist? Somebody who believes that white people are superior to all other races, and they show evidence of hatred and discrimination and wants of violence against people of other races.
Yes.
And that would include anybody. If a black person thought that about black people or Jewish people, it goes all the way.
That's just racism.
Exactly.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Racism can exist within any person.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so if that's our definition of white supremacists, besides the comment about white men need to run everything, would you say that if somebody says that it's a problem for America to be majority non-white, would you say that that's a racist white supremacist comment?
If it's a problem for America to be the
they say it would be to the detriment of this country if America was ever majority non-white.
Well, that's honestly a complex question, because how are you defining white, right? Because when you look at America, America is not an ethnic group. America has always been, honestly, like since you see like our like, you know, when we're like really getting started with the Industrial Revolution, we were built on, honestly, on many immigrant efforts. And so when you look at Americans, when you're like, well, you're white, what does that mean? So many people are Irish, Slovakian, European descent.
Oh no, Irish, those people, that's all within white. Even some Jewish people would fall into, like Benjamin Netanyahu is white.
What I'm trying to say is that America is not an ethnic group, and it never has been. And so to treat it that way is to betray the nature of America, because hear me out. America was never about an ethnic group. America was always about a dream, an idea. America, that's why anyone can become American and take this on. My dad actually came to the States as an immigrant, Argentinian. I'm a dual citizen. And he took on America as his own. He's now a citizen himself. And so this is so important, because this is to answer your question. Is it to the detriment of America? That's like a logical fallacy, because America is made up of immigrants, and America is not an ethnic group like other nations. It is a dream, an idea, and something that we have fought for in war, that we have shed blood with. On the battlefields. And so to say, oh, you know, maybe immigrants don't belong here. No, they're a part of the fabric of our nation.
Yeah, well, okay. So that's a common mistake that people make. America is not a country of immigrants. It is not a country built by immigrants. It is a country of settlers. The difference is immigrants are people that come from another country into an already established country and want to be a part of that country. Settlers are people that form a new country, find land that is barren, form a new country on that land, and make their own laws and their own form of government. So America was not started by immigrants. America was started by settlers, and those settlers and the people that built this country, our founding fathers, were predominantly white Christian men.
I know that the Pilgrims were settlers, but what I'm saying is that with America as a whole, right? America was built by the help of immigrants and by people coming in to aid our workforce, to aid our infrastructure, to aid the Industrial Revolution.
I have no problem with immigration. I do have a problem with mass immigration, and that's another topic that we'll get into. Just a quick question, and this is not criticizing you or your family or anything.
Let's let Destiny finish the point that she was saying just a second ago.
What point? Okay, that's fine.
But yes, no, I just feel, of course, I acknowledge everything about the Pilgrims, but I really do stand by the ways in which immigrants have helped us. And so to say that America belongs to the white, there's so many problems with that comment.
I never said America, and neither has Nick, that America belongs to white people. America was founded by white people, and whether or not you think it, America was founded with a culture. And I will quote J.D. Vance. Like, I didn't think I'd be quoting J.D. Vance on this podcast either. We are a Christian nation. We always have been a Christian nation. What that means is the difference between us and other people like Israel, which is a Jewish nation state. We are not nation state in the terms of you are considered a second-class citizen or you are considered less than if you do not practice Christianity. The uniqueness about America is that we give everybody the freedom of religion, and nobody should be persecuted for religious views that they have. But up until a certain point in history, all of our leaders and the people in power in the government were Christians, and they agreed with the biblical values that our country was founded by and that our Constitution was written on. The point that I'm making is we have now seen in places like Miami. If you go to Miami, Florida, it is 72% Hispanic. It is 7% white. If you went from Tulsa to Miami, you'd think you were in like a Costa Rican country. That's the issue I have. I have no issue with immigrants being in this country, but when you go to a certain part of America and it doesn't even look like you're in America anymore, that's the issue. The issue is that we have let so many immigrants into this country. Immigration has been so rampant. So my solution, and you can debate this, but my solution to immigration, and me and Nick might differ on this, but my solution would be we need to close the border completely. We need to shut down all legal immigration, all illegal immigration. There needs to be no one coming into this country until we can get every single illegal immigrant that's in this country deported back to their own country, get set on ground zero, and then once we reopen it, we need to have a very strict process for legal immigration, and I don't think we should have more than 500,000 to 1 million people coming in a year, because the issue is we've had so much immigration that now we have to scale down, and if we keep on the path that we're on, in 30 years, white people will be the minority in this country. It's already only 57% white right now.
Okay, so to address what you just said?
Yeah.
Okay, so on the Judeo-Christian values that our nation was founded upon, yes, completely true. I completely agree. Our nation was founded on Judeo-Christian values, and that is something that I'm very proud of as an American. And then with our nation losing its culture, losing its values, I also agree that this is something that we really need to bring back. That's why I loved and adored Charlie Kirk for many of his views and a lot of his influence in the world. And I really admired and esteemed him him, and it was very sad to see him go.
Absolutely. It's ridiculous.
With your comment on absolute shutting of the border, I disagree with that. I don't agree with the absolute shutting of the border. I do, however, agree that if something isn't done with immigration waves and mass immigration, I do think that that is problematic for America. And I think that you just have to look to other nations and the effect of mass immigration on their nations to see that that is true. To see the effects of Europe, right? To look at France, to look at Germany. They have completely changed because of their allowed policies of mass immigration. And so to address that there is indeed an issue with mass immigration, I think that that is completely reasonable for the nature of America. I don't necessarily agree that shutting the border completely would be beneficial to our nation. However, I do agree with looking for, addressing illegal people here who are problematic. And I think that we need better governmental infrastructure on those points.
And just a question again, I wasn't asked before, this is not to criticize you or your family or anybody. This is just my place of just trying to understand. So in your comment about your dad coming to America, you talked about that, and then you said, and he eventually became a citizen. So when he came to America, did he come by way of the legal process, or did he originally come illegally? Just a question.
He did everything legally.
Okay, perfect. And I think that's that. And people like that are the people that are being defrauded by all this mass illegal immigration, because you have people like your dad who have done the process correctly and who probably didn't get into this country as fast as they wanted to because of how I agree that our system is flawed, and we need to fix our immigration system in the way that we handle things with that. But I also believe it's an issue of culture, and I'll quote Charlie Kirk again, but I'll ask a question first. The issue of slavery. So obviously slavery, after it was abolished and everything, do you believe that our country would be beneficial and African Americans would have been beneficial if there was a naturalization process after slavery was abolished? Because what happened with slavery was abolished, and then within like a blink of an eye, or within a couple of days or a week, African Americans went from being slaves and being considered property to being considered equal and free people that have all the same rights as other people do. But there was no naturalization process. It's like a dog. I don't mean to compare black people to dogs, but it's, if you have a dog that spends all of its life in captivity, or an animal in the zoo has never been in the wild, and you just release them into the wild with no naturalization process, they're not going to know what to do with themselves. They're not going to know how to handle themselves. So something that Charlie Kirk mentioned was that's why people get mad at him, because he said he thinks the civil rights movement was a failed action. And the reason he thinks it was a failed action is because after you succeeded and slavery was abolished, you didn't have any sort of naturalization process to naturalize these people to life as
Just
a citizen. And that's why we have a lot of the behavior we have today with the issues in ghetto neighborhoods in that part. So would you agree that people coming in from other countries as well, obviously we can't go back and change slavery, but like there are all these Muslims that come into our country who want to bring Sharia law into America and want to they should not be bringing their, I shouldn't say culture's fine, but you cannot be bringing, we have certain laws here, we have certain culture in America, and if we have Muslim people saying they want to practice Sharia law, and then we have other people like people from Africa coming in, and like you have to abide to our standards, you have to learn our language, learn to speak English, and if you're not going to naturalize yourself to our way of life, then you coming here is going to be a detriment to this country.
We only have a couple more minutes on this topic, by the way.
Okay.
So let's let Destiny answer.
Well, I am going to play the clip. So I'm going to play the clip during
play the
this
clip
topic.
and then let Destiny answer and then move
But
on.
this clip is not related to this. I'm going to let her answer first.
Right.
Okay, well, on the topic of Muslims, right? If a Muslim comes to this nation, they have religious freedom. They can practice Islam protected, right? However, with the Muslim populations that are imposing Sharia law, right, saying we want this nation to be run by Sharia law, that is incompatible with Western values.
Exactly.
And that will take our nation down if we allow it.
Exactly.
We have seen what Sharia law, what Islamic law does to its people. I think Iran is a great testament to that. Islamic theocracy doesn't take a nation very far.
No, it does not at all.
And so that's what I think.
Yeah, and then my last thing before I'm honestly gonna make this another topic, so I'll make this the next topic. I'll add a topic in, but I'm gonna go ahead and play this clip. This is related to. So obviously you said, and I want to make sure I have a clear answer on this. Do you believe that Nick Fuentes is a genuine follower of Christ, or do you think he's not? Obviously, you think, in your opinion, some of his views are vehemently anti-Christian and lack decency, but in general, would you say that you believe he is a genuine Christ follower, or do you think that he's faking it?
Okay, so I cannot judge someone's salvation, right? But the Bible does tell us to judge someone's fruits.
Oh, absolutely.
And by that, we will know whether they have the light of Christ within them.
Yep.
And based on his comments, based on the way that he conducts himself and treats other people and other groups through his speech, I would not credit him that way.
So here, this is just a clip. And this is also you said that he preaches hate and all these things where I would disagree. So just this clip, and then I'll get your thoughts on it.
We are the the good side. And what makes us good is that we have Christ. What makes Christianity and Christ so different from the other religions is that our religion is based on the bearing of suffering for the sake of even those that persecute us. An overflowing of love, an overflowing of self-giving love, so much of it cannot be contained. An unconditional, absolute standard of love for all of God's children, even those that are misguided, even those that persecute us, even the most heinous among us. That is what makes us different. That is what makes us good. You think you're good? You're not. You are not good. I am not good. You are a man. I am a man. You are a sinner. I am a sinner. We cannot save ourselves. We cannot save this world. God can save us. God can save the world. And God saves us, and God saves the world by drawing all of us up onto the cross with him. And we join not just in his glory, but in his suffering. Real suffering. Not imaginary, not a nice story. Real suffering, real death, real destruction, real misery. We bear a cross like Christ bears a cross, like his disciples, like the martyrs, like the saints bear a cross. And you better get comfortable up there. Drink up. And you bear that cross not for your king, not for yourself, not for your children, which are an extension of yourself. You bear that cross and that suffering. You drink from that chalice for your enemies, for those that persecute you, for those that hate you, for the sake of Christ. That doesn't mean we let them hurt us. It doesn't mean we let them take over our country, but it does mean that we do not lower ourselves to their level. It does mean that we do not resort to our own powers, our own machinations, our own plans, our own pride with vengeance, with retaliation. Vengeance belongs to God. God is both merciful and just. And no one can say they have faith in God if they do not have faith in God's perfect justice, which we cannot understand, which is hard to accept. Sometimes impossible, but that's what it is to be a Christian. That's what it was like to be the first Christians, to watch God himself nailed to a cross for the sake of everyone. You cannot tell me you have faith in God if you don't have faith that all of those people that seek to hurt us will ultimately meet their divinely appointed justice at God's hands, but not our own. Those lives are not ours to take.
So what would you say to that?
Okay, so here's what I have to say. Like I said, I cannot judge someone's salvation, but do look at the fruits. That is what God has given us as a standard.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, a great example is that many, many, many divisive and horrible actors in history have said horrible things, but then, right, horrible things like Nick Fuentes, but then had this biblical rhetoric. For example, some people in history who have slaveholders in the American South would often use biblical language. The Ku Klux Klan, right? They would defend Christian civilization, but did horrible things. Nazi Germany even invoked God, providence, in defending Christian Europe, right? That's really important. Cult leaders using scripture to control followers. So, and then also colonial civilizing missions, right? With, you know, the Crusaders and everything like that. And so
Yeah.
somebody who has a great spiel like that doesn't impress me very much when their worldview has everything else like this.
True, but that's
a bunch of awful anti-Christian rhetoric. And so when you pull up that clip and
Yeah.
you're like, wow, maybe this will defend him.
Well,
please let me finish.
Okay.
When you pull up a clip like that and you're like, well, what can you say to that? He's such a good Christian. He's such a good role model. That is not impressing me for a second. I look at who someone is completely,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Look at the Crusaders, look at the Ku Klux Klan, look at Nazi Germany. They had biblical rhetoric as well. Why? To appeal to those audiences. Do not be deceived.
Well,
He's
anybody can
trying-
twist scripture. Anybody can twist scripture. There's people that twist scripture to say that LGBTQ is okay.
Of course.
But you can't
Of
do that.
course.
That's not what
So-
he just did, though.
No. Listen, he right now is giving a spiel, right? But then that beautiful worldview that he just presented is in complete conflict with a lot of the content of everything else he says.
See,
and so to take that literally and to be so moved, and this is a really good Christian role model I should follow,
But-
not for a second convinced.
Well, but that's the thing. So you're acting like that's like one spiel. That's like no, that's the regular setting of his show. That's the regular. Again, you have to acknowledge that you do realize that his show is 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. 3.5 hours. So that is 18 to 20 hours a week. That is, so if you're going to take all of his stuff that he's done over the last 5 years, that's hundreds of thousands of hours that are going to this, and people will take 30-second clips from anything. So obviously we don't have time to watch a full show on this podcast, but I'm trying. If you did watch, and I would encourage you to go watch full episodes, but if you did watch a full episode, you would see that the amount of stuff that you hate that he says, and whether you think it's edgelording or comedic or actually serious, that makes up about 15% of his actual show.
Okay, well then to respond, right?
Yeah.
If he, right, is living with himself, saying all of these things on his show, spreading all of these lies, all of this misinformation, and then giving that spiel, and if he genuinely believes all of this in a cognitively congruent way,
yeah,
right? Because what he says, that monologue, that beautiful monologue, and then the disgusting crap that he says, that is cognitive dissonance. Those two comments, those two trains of thought cannot coexist. And so then the question is, wow, if he really is coexisting, these two spiels, inside of his mind, inside of his psyche, then I'd say he's deceived. I really do.
They cannot, you're correct, they cannot coexist, but the issue...
Because people can live in a level of deception with themselves.
They can.
They can be, I'm saved, I'm spreading love,
True.
and then do things like this. And to me, if he truly means everything, and if he is truly mentally congruent, then he is living in a super high level of deception.
But the issue is, and that argument would hold up, and that would be true if you're taking every single thing that comes out of his mouth seriously. I'm saying if you take out all the jokes, you take out all the edgelording, you take out everything that's if you take out all that and you literally just look at, and it's compartmentalizing. If you take everything he says in a given episode of his show, and you take out the edgelording, you take out the joking, and you take out the things that aren't meant to be taken seriously, all the things that he says seriously and the things that he actually means, 99% of it lines up with the worldview he claims to have. The serious comments. Not the joking. And a lot of the things that you brought up, I mean, obviously a couple of them we couldn't find clips for, but for many of them, I mean, and people can claim it's seriousness, but I think everybody has a level. Nobody is that tone deaf that they can't tell when somebody's actively laughing as they're saying something. They're not being serious in that instance. They are saying something overly exaggerated and hyperbolic that they know is going to get people riled up to make a point as a joke.
In a lot of instances, yes, he does joke. But then throughout this whole conversation, you've been like, no, he was joking. He was joking.
He has, joking. In many instances.
But when you look at Nick Fuentes as a whole,
yeah,
it's not, he's just joking in every instance here where he says something truly awful. When you look and when you verify, and when you do your fact checks like you've been doing here, you have fact checked, yes, he has actually said this. Yes, he believes this. Yeah. And it's disturbing. So just to say, no, you get a pass. You get a go free card. You're just joking in all of these instances. Severely troubling things.
Absolutely.
And
nobody should have a free pass for anything. And I would say, I would strongly advise against, and this is something...
No. But you're not seeing yourself. You're giving him a pass.
I'm not giving him a pass for anything.
Things. No, because you're saying he's joking. He's joking, and that is the great fallacy of many Nick Fuentes followers. They buy this lie that he is just joking, that he's just doing this, and not even realizing that he is actually selling you a narrative. He's selling you an ideology. He's selling you a worthless lie that will harm society. And what do you see in society? What is the fruit that you see of his followers? You see
people are waking up.
You see edgelords. No, they're not waking up. Yes, they're becoming anti-Semitic. They're becoming,
and that's
where we fundamentally disagree. You think people are waking up? No, people are becoming deceived, hateful.
You can believe that, and that's fine. But the other thing that you have to understand is that you say, "Oh, he doesn't know what he's doing." He knows that his marketing is genius. He's even talked about this. He released a whole merch line.
I didn't say he doesn't know what he's doing.
He released a whole merch line 2 months ago, and he has this huge graphic tee that has a bunch of figures on it. It has Charlie Kirk, it has Candace Owens, it has him, it has Tucker, and like in the background there's this tiny swastika, and he's talking about it. And he even had his dad on, and his dad he was like, "Do you really have to have the swastika on there? I mean, that's going to make people mad." And he's like, "That's the point. It's to be edgy. It's to be provocative. Nobody's putting a tiny swastika in the background of a shirt is not saying that I condone the Holocaust and I condone the killing of millions of Jews. It's using something that it's basically defanging, as he said. It's the whole reason that Kanye West, and I mean, I'm not going to get into a whole topic on this, but the reason many people think that Kanye West wrote the song HH to be glorifying to Hitler and to glorify the Holocaust and all the things that Hitler did? No. The reason HH was created is because he was making a statement that, look, in the industry that we live in hip-hop and rap, people can make money about murdering people can make money about being in gangs, and people can make money about taking advantage of women, all these horrible things, and it's praised and great. But as soon as you mention Hitler or the Holocaust in a positive light, even if you're joking, it immediately gets censored. That song was made as a statement to say, look, I'm going to do this and let's see how long it takes for this to get banned. And to take the song like Kanye made and to take that and say, oh, he thinks that Hitler's great and all these things, it's honestly just ridiculous. It doesn't make sense.
Okay, well, right now you're saying that when anti-Semitic instances happen, those are the only ones that actually get taken seriously, that, get taken down.
I didn't say only, I said the majority.
Okay, but that's super errant, because...
There's only a couple more minutes left in this topic, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's very, very errant, because when you look at the amazing amount of LGBTQ incidents where people were fired from jobs, where people were taken down from positions, demoted, censored forever, there are so many instances in the LGBTQ. There are so many instances in even pro-life ideas, right? People have been banned. Planned Parenthood, many ideological instances where you see that people were addressed harshly for certain issues. And so to say, it seems like, there's this double standard and this group is untouchable.
Because why is it, and I've even done this experiment on my own and it's produced a lot of fruit. Why is it that if I post a reel on Instagram, me talking and doing a monologue, I can use the word faggot, I can use the word retard, I can use any word that I want, I can use Jeet if I'm talking about Indians, any derogatory term talking about any other race or ethnicity, the videos don't get taken down. People can make racist jokes, the comedians do this all the time, the videos get stayed up, but as soon as if somebody was to ever say Heil Hitler or say anything on a video, that video immediately gets taken down. And I saw this. Actually, I'm currently taking a cross-platform writing class here at ORU, and we have to have a client that we're doing a social media campaign for, and my client is Nick Fuentes. And for the final project, we're supposed to make a social media campaign, and I actually tried to do it in real life. I created a fan account like many of the Groypers do on TikTok, Instagram, X, all these things, and started to just take reels and repost them onto these accounts. And most of them, different platforms do have different requirements. On Instagram, they all got taken down immediately. I got sent an email within 24 hours saying we don't allow videos of people who spread hate speech and are inciting violence. TikTok did the same thing. Facebook and X didn't do it as much. The issue is, and it's gotten gradually over the last 10 years, because if you look at 5 years ago, anti-Semitism wasn't even a nearly as relevant topic. It was racism. You're right. It was people like Morgan Walling getting canceled for saying N-word. It's people getting canceled for LGBTQ rhetoric. But in the last 5 years, and in the last 3 years mainly, it has gotten to a point where you can pretty much make jokes about any community you want. Anything, but if you make jokes about the Holocaust, if you make jokes about Jewish people, that's where the line gets drawn. And that is inherently a double standard.
Well, the reason why anti-Semitic libels, tropes, conspiracies are treated so harshly is because that would be to assign an entire ethnic group blame, to assign massive, honestly, to practically flash back to things that scar the world forever, right? But then to address your other points, when people say hateful things about Muslims, right? That, Muslims are terrorists, or hate speech about Muslim people, hate speech about Black people, that is addressed. And so to act like it's not addressed is not true. So when you say my Instagram was punished, right? Well, there are people with other stories where they said something about a Muslim person and it was addressed, where people said things about LGBTQ where they were addressed.
30 seconds
I know
left.
Stories.
A little while ago.
I know.
Well, I am going to make a point after she's done. But
there was a famous story actually of a bakery, right? And a gay couple wanted to get married.
I know the story. Yeah,
right?
I know. I'm very familiar with this.
They refused to make the couple for the gay couple.
That was a very long time ago.
The cake for the gay couple, and they were shut down. And so to say that other social comments, right, are not held to the same standard is false.
You cannot honestly tell me that there is equally as much racist, homophobic, transphobic, and stuff against Muslims and Indians taken down off social media platforms as there is things that are deemed anti-Semitic. And before you respond, I'm going to say, you mentioned something about Muslims and that all Muslims are terrorists. Obviously, that is a stereotype. Not all Muslims are terrorists. But given, again, this is not stereotyping, this is not racism, this is simple data analysis. I will quote, are you familiar with who Martin Cedra is? He's a pastor. Millicent Cedra, redhead girl. is his
Fedra,
wife.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, I
So
know
Martin
that.
Fedra, I'm gonna quote him. He is a Muslim, came here from a country, is a Christian. I hold this belief as well, but I was shocked to hear him say it since he comes from a Muslim background. Would you agree with him and me that there should be much more scrutiny if a Muslim person is coming through TSA? There should be a much more rigorous and more scrutinous look over of them of TSA than there would be of white people or African Americans, because Muslims are the ones that have a history of terrorism, especially terrorism on planes. So he advocates that there should be much stricter guidelines for Muslims going through TSA than people like white people and African Americans, because they commit a majority of terrorism crimes, especially those done on planes. And using that same logic, that's why you should have increased police forces in majority black neighborhoods and ghetto neighborhoods, because that's where the crime is increased. And it's not racism, it's data analysis. So would you agree that there should be more rigorous TSA for Muslim people because of their history with terrorism?
All right, I'll give 1 minute for Destiny's response, and then we're going to move on.
Okay.
I, of course, am a proponent of looking at demographic data seriously and taking all of the facts into account. I am not one for treating every single practicing Muslim as a prospective terrorist. I think that all people should be subject to, obviously security, to the measures that are taken in airports, and that due process should be taken. That is what I think.
But should the same treatment be given to everybody, or should you be more scrutinous over people that have a certain reputation?
I don't think that a broad stereotype should be applied to all people.
Okay.
I do think, though, that if if they were Muslim, is showing a certain dangerous threat, then I think that they should be investigated more.
That's fair. I would agree with that. All right, so this segment, it's called Guest Choice, and it's basically if there's a topic that we didn't get to that you wanted to talk about, or a topic that we may have rushed through, or you don't think that your point got to be made across, this is just a chance for you to either pick a new topic or to go back to any of the topics that we've discussed and just further the conversation if you want to. It's up to you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so this whole podcast time was specifically to address Nick Fuentes and several ideas that he's brought to the table of society.
And mainly the article, but yeah.
Yes, via my article. I encourage you to check it out. It's on the Times of Israel blogs, Nick Fuentes' Arsenal of Lies Exposed. I think you'll learn a lot about it, like I did in the process of researching when I wrote it out. And a message that I would have to say to the world is please, please, please learn to understand how the media works. Please learn to read laterally, to look at your sources, to get information from multiple sources and streams of information. Look into different voices, into different ideas, because the truth is that there are much, much, much better voices out there than Nick Fuentes than you could be listening to. And so I encourage you to hold up the truth, hold up truth as your standard, hold up biblical morality as your standard, hold up kindness, respect for humanity, and goodness as your standard when you are assessing and judging a person's worldview. And please do not fall into the fallacy, oh, well, they were just joking, and, we just joke about everything. Please do not fall into that, because what we say are words, they carry power, and words historically affect the world and the fruit it produces in its societies. Please take heed to what you say, and in these weighty times with Jewish people, because most of what I said had to do about the issue of anti-Semitism in the world, please look into the facts, study the beautiful nation that is Israel, study its glorious people, and learn about their history and the painful aspects of their history with the Holocaust, because the truth is that yes, 6 million people did die. Yes, there were gas chambers, and yes, falsifiers of history and of facts still exist in the form of people like Nick Fuentes today. And so that is what I want you to know, and I just pray that you are a responsible citizen. Thank you very much.
All right, so that was the guest choice, and that's great. Next one is called the disagreement. So basically, I asked this of everybody, and this is going to actually be interesting because for most of my guests I've had on previously, most of their hot takes are things that we've already discussed in this podcast. This will kind of be something that's not what's really on the agenda. But what's one belief or hot take that you have that you think a majority of people, even people in your own circle, would disagree with you on?
So a hot take that I have that maybe some people, even in my own circle, might disagree with me on, is that I actually am in favor of the war that we are in right now with Iran. I think that obviously, although there are a lot of elements to this war that are precarious and very fragile, and I completely acknowledge that, I really hope it doesn't escalate, right?
No, absolutely. Yeah.
But what I am in favor of is the fact that America and Israel right now are doing the world a favor and finally addressing the Iranian regime, right? For years, the Iranian regime has harassed America, killed our citizens, posed a threat to the world as the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism, terrorizing the world, honestly, through its threat and through its donations to proxies and the way that it has funded terror that has terrorized the world. So not only is it in the national interest of America to have this threat eliminated, but it is truly in the interest of the world for the Iranian regime to be decimated. And so when the Ayatollah died, it was a huge day for the world. Not only did he die, but the leader of Hamas was killed. The leader of Hezbollah was killed. That is a huge deal. Leaders and heads of major terrorist groups were killed, right? And so that is something that I applaud. Not only are they stopping there, they also attacked several enrichment sites, nuclear enrichment sites, attacking the nuclear program, making it certain that they cannot acquire or enrich a nuclear weapon in the near future.
Yeah.
Because, we all know this, Iran was run by religious fanatics who wanted nothing more than to get a hold of a nuclear weapon to destroy Israel, to destroy America, as was their well-known and famous chant, right? Death to America.
Oh, yeah, and that's still something that kids have to chant on the way into a lot of schools in Iran, which is ridiculous.
It's awful.
Yeah.
So I think that ultimately, right now, the world should be, honestly, very happy with what they are trying to accomplish, right? As to whether that actually materializes in a good way, that is something that we should still wait and see and pray for. But the Iranian people themselves are very happy that the Ayatollah died, that America and Israel are doing something to take down the regime. The deaths of thousands of Iranians earlier this past year, I believe that they would have wanted this kind of action. The Ayatollah dead, their oppressor. And it's actually a beautiful thing to me that Israel is helping them, because they are also Iranians, the people, chanting death to Israel, just indoctrination, right? But now they're seeing Israel helping them. And so that to me is like an incredible, not only diplomatic move, but what an incredible situation, because here you have a whole people chanting death to Israel, but now Israel is the one helping them. And so this obviously not only could help the world, but also help a Middle Eastern relationship where Iranians and Israelis could potentially become incredible partners and allies. Yeah. And so, of course, I am very, very aware of how precarious this war is, and I watch the news and I read all the articles and everything. But I am hopeful, that it could turn out good. And the motivation of the U.S. and the motivation of Israel is ultimately good to take out a massive world threat that we would all benefit if it were absent completely. So that's what I think.
All right, that's I was not expecting that. I'm actually pleasantly surprised, because that's an issue that's being talked about a lot, especially in the present day, and it is an issue that pretty much every community is divided on: liberals, Christians, conservatives. You have people on all sides of that issue. And I would say my main argument is for the reason that I don't so support it, and it's for a few reasons. But for one of the main reasons is I am ultimately America first. I think that America needs to run things, and we need to make decisions based on how they benefit America. I do not think America should have a globalist view on how we run our government. I don't think that we should make decisions based on how it's going to affect other areas of the world. I think we need to make decisions based on how it affects us. So I am not denying that the Iranian people are happy that the Ayatollah is dead. Probably anybody should be happy that he's dead, because he was a horrible person. But the motive, and Trump even said that himself after the first bombing that started all this, he was asked what his motive was, and he said it was two things. It was to free the Iranian regime, and it was to assist Israel in their attack. While freeing the Iranian regime from being oppressed is a good thing for them, my issue is the motive and what caused us to do that. We should not be bombing other countries and not making decisions to go to war to fight for the people in those countries. Trump has even said this himself. Trump was berating Obama in 2011, making fun of him for going to war with Iran and Iraq, and he was like, oh, the only reason he's doing that is because he can't negotiate, and he doesn't know how to negotiate. And now you have Trump, who ran his whole campaign. Part of his campaign was no new wars. He was against wars in Iran. Charlie Kirk was very much with him on that, and Charlie Kirk advised him on that a lot. So I think that no matter how much good it's going to do in the world, if our motive is not specifically to be benefiting America, we should not do it.
If I could just say one last thing to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You touched on the issue of foreign policy, right? Americans, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. so many people have lots of viewpoints on
Yeah,
foreign policy.
absolutely.
And that's a completely legit stance. The only thing, though, is that you said America first,
Yeah.
right? My interpretation of that is that this move actually is America first, in the sense that Iran has killed so many American citizens over the years, right? And then you might ask, well, if they were killing us for years, then why are we finally doing something about it? My response to that is that I think that the unprecedented mobilization of the Iranian people, their incredible numbers of horrific death, all helped to facilitate and act as the catalyst of America and Israel doing something together to address that. Because 40,000 deaths is a lot. The Iranian regime stripping them of internet for months, that is a huge deal. And so I think that America and Israel, seeing that they could do something, they came together to do this, and I think that everyone is going to benefit if this turns out well. Of course, I'm not, naively optimistic. It could turn out very bad. But I'm just saying, at the stage that we're in right now, I think that this actually is not only an America first thing, but a for the world thing.
Okay, and that's a fair point. I would personally disagree with that, but I think we both have fair points, and we're both coming from good places. We're just arriving at slightly different conclusions, which is very okay. All right, so now the last segment is a little game that we do with every guest, and it's called One Word Association. Basically, all it is I have a list of names. Some of the names are people related to the topics that we've been discussing. Some of them aren't. And for each name, I just like to ask the person if you could use one word to describe this person. So if you were asked to use one word, or the first word that comes to your mind to describe this person, what word would that be? The first one is Nick Fuentes.
Dangerous.
Adolf Hitler.
Horrifying.
Joseph Stalin.
Awful.
Benjamin Netanyahu.
Debatable.
Donald Trump.
Admirable.
Joe Biden.
Slow.
Kamala Harris.
Incompetent.
Andrew Tate.
Perverse.
JD Vance.
Interesting.
Ben Shapiro.
Awesome.
Candace Owens.
Corrupted.
Erica Kirk.
Admirable.
Matt Walsh.
Amazing.
Charlie Kirk.
Extraordinary.
Tucker Carlson.
Deceptive.
Piers Morgan.
Interesting.
And last but not least, Jesus Christ.
Holy.
All right. Well, are there any final remarks or final things that you would like to leave the audience with?
Well, number one, we should always seek to preserve political dialogue. I think that we need to stop demonizing political parties and just hear each other's thoughts. But we also need to be very clear on what we will and will not tolerate, because we need to stop acting like ideas and thoughts do not have consequences. Thoughts and ideas do have consequences, and we need to act like our words are weighty, because the truth is that they are weighty. Jesus, my Lord, my Savior, he said, the power of life and death is in the tongue, the power of blessing and cursing. Oh, that you would choose life. Oh, that you would choose blessing. So whether you have a world stage or whether you don't, use it for blessing, use it for life.
Amen. And then the last thing, I ask this to every guest. If you were to die, or if something were to happen, and this is the last thing somebody ever heard you say, what would your one message to the world be?
There's probably a lot of things that I could say, a lot of things that would go through my head. But I would probably say there's only one way to live, and that is passionately. And there's only one person to live your life for, and that is the one who died gloriously and beautifully for you, Jesus Christ.
Amen. Well, Destiny, I really appreciate you coming on and being willing to have this conversation. Obviously, we don't agree on everything, but that's the point of the show. It's the point of the podcast, is to have real conversations with different perspectives and give you a platform to say your things and give people a chance to hear both sides. So I really appreciate you being willing to do this, and I hope we could do this again sometime.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. If this episode challenged you, encouraged you, or helped you to think differently, follow the podcast, leave a review, and share this with someone who you think needs to hear it. Remember, truth matters, discipline matters, faith matters, and your life has a purpose. I'm Josh Cook, and this is Truth Uncensored. We'll see you in the next episode.